You will be shocked by what justice has just revealed about the Epstein files. Everything we were told, everything we were promised could be falling apart. You thought the case was closed, that everything ended with Epstein? Think again. A new revelation has just broken, and it changes everything we thought we knew. But here's the real shock. It wasn't just Epstein. No, there's so much more behind this story. This case is far from over, and what's hidden in the files could be far more terrifying than you imagine. You think you know it all? Wait until you discover what's coming next. What you're about to hear will make you question everything. But hold on, that's not all. What you think you know about this case might well be the least significant part of the story. We were told Epstein was the sole perpetrator, that everything else was just an accident. But take a closer look. This latest leak of documents, the Epstein files, reveals something much darker. And the worst part? The idea that he was the only one involved now seems completely unrealistic. If these new details are true, it raises a crucial question. If everything we've known so far is false, then what else is hidden in these files? The silence of the authorities, their lack of transparency, all of this demands reflection. Why are these details being hidden? Why does this story keep taking unexpected turns? And this is just the beginning. Brace yourself, because what comes next will completely overturn your understanding of the facts. Here's the first point that changes everything. A clear statement was made publicly by the Deputy Attorney General. He stated, I quote almost word for word, that if there was any information about men who abused these women, the Department of Justice would pursue them. He even emphasized one thing. According to him, there were no other names hidden in the Epstein files. No network, no co-conspirators, just Epstein alone. But here's the problem. In the latest wave of documents released, a message appears clearly. A message addressed directly to Jeffrey Epstein, thanking him for a fun night with an explicit reference to your younger girl described as a bit naughty. This is not a rumor. This is not an interpretation. It's a document straight from the files themselves. And now look at what's missing from the official statement. No explanation about this type of correspondence, no comment on its origin, no specific denial. And this is exactly where the story begins to crack. Now, watch how the situation worsens from here, because this document doesn't appear in a vacuum. It comes after years of investigations, after millions of pages collected, after a federal procedure led by the Southern District of New York's office, and yet the official narrative remains the same. No other culprits identified. But here's what makes this position increasingly hard to maintain. In previously revealed internal exchanges, federal prosecutors explicitly talked about 10 co-conspirators linked to Epstein's crimes. 10, not a vague number, not a hypothesis, a precise number discussed between agents and prosecutors. Then suddenly, this lead disappears. The investigation is stopped. The topic is closed. And today you are asked to believe that there was nothing else to pursue. This is where something abnormal begins to be normalized. Concrete elements exist, then they are ignored. Leads are mentioned, then abandoned. And no one explains why. Now observe this moment closely, because it's here that the story stops being an isolated case and starts to look like a pattern. And now here's the element that changes the way this case should be viewed. Because it's no longer just about verbal contradictions, it's about concrete actions. On one hand, officials publicly state that there are no other identifiable perpetrators. On the other hand, internal documents show that federal prosecutors were actively discussing at least 10 potential co-conspirators as early as 2019. Not unknowns, not vague leads. Individuals clearly identified enough to be part of operational exchanges between investigators. Then everything stops. The investigation is killed, as the word's used. And today, these same institutions explain that there's nothing more to see, nothing more to pursue. This is where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Either these prosecutors were gravely mistaken at the time, or someone decided that these leads should never be followed. And here's the phrase that should stay in your mind. You don't go from 10 identified co-conspirators to no one else exists without a deliberate decision. This is no longer a matter of error, it's a matter of choice. And from that point on, the entire case takes on a different dimension. Now watch what happens next, because everything accelerates. First, a massive release of documents, nearly 3 million files made public. Then a mistake that might not be one. Thousands of references containing victims' names, personal information, sometimes even identification documents are exposed. The Department of Justice had one simple mission: protect the victims, and yet it's them who find themselves back at the center of the shock. Then comes the official response: no clear accountability, no detailed explanation of how this data was made public. Meanwhile, millions of other documents remain withheld with no clear justification. They talk about necessary redactions, but with no list, no catalog, no transparency. The pressure mounts, victims are traumatized again, the institutions close ranks, and every day that passes makes the situation more unstable. Because at this point, it's no longer just about what's hidden, but about what's now escaping any control. And the question becomes unavoidable: what happens if this spiral continues? Now, bring it back to your reality, because this case isn't abstract. It doesn't only live in court files or on TV screens. It affects real people: women who were minors at the time of the events, victims who thought they would finally see the truth emerge, only to find themselves exposed, identified, sometimes even re-traumatized publicly. Imagine discovering that your name, your identity, your personal information is circulating again, not because of an abuser, but because of an error or negligence from the very state that was supposed to protect you. That's exactly what's happening here. And while institutions debate procedures and technical justifications, it's these women who pay the real price. Not in theory, in their daily lives, in their safety, in their ability to move on. This is where all ideology disappears. There's only one raw fact left: when justice fails to protect the most vulnerable, it ceases to be credible for everyone. And if this sensation feels familiar to you, if you've ever had the feeling that the rules don't apply the same to everyone, say it in the comments, because that feeling is at the heart of what's happening next. Now, let's take a step back, because what you're seeing here isn't just a series of isolated mistakes. It's a mechanism, a system that operates according to very specific incentives. On one side, an institution that holds complete control over the information. On the other, a huge risk if this information leaks unfiltered. The more explosive the documents, the stronger the temptation to slow down, fragment, and drown the process. The power here doesn't come from what's said, but from what's held back. And look at how it operates. They talk about transparency while keeping millions of documents under lock and key. They invoke the law, yet can't explain clearly what redactions were made. They promise protection for the victims, yet let their data circulate. This isn't chaos, it's an unstable balance between fear, control, and institutional reputation. And here's the most troubling idea: the more this system protects itself, the less capable it becomes of delivering justice. Not out of open malice, but due to internal logic. This is exactly why this case goes beyond Epstein. It shows how, when too many stakes accumulate, the truth becomes negotiable. And when the truth becomes negotiable, what follows is never trivial. Now let's look at what's unfolding right in front of us. Not in 10 years, not in some abstract hypothesis. In the next moves already taking shape. Two trajectories are possible, and neither is theoretical. The first option: everything remains under institutional control. Documents continue to be released in fragments, justifications remain vague, accountability dilutes, time passes, and with time, public attention fades. This is a well-known strategy. It doesn't require any official announcement, just inertia. But there's another trajectory it's already beginning to show. The victims now have a clear legal lever to demand the intervention of a special master, an independent authority placed directly under the control of a judge. And this detail changes everything, because from that moment on, every withheld document will need to be justified, every redaction explained, every omission defended publicly. It's no longer about communication, but about compliance with the law. And this is where the tension becomes maximal, because if a special master steps in, the pace will quicken, the framework will tighten, and the decisions will finally escape the control of those who had been calling the shots. Nothing is set in stone yet. But one thing is clear: the next move is already forming, and when it comes, it won't be discreet. So here's the idea you need to keep in mind, the one that rewrites this whole story in a single stroke. This case isn't just about missing documents or contradictory statements. It's a real-time demonstration of what happens when the power to decide what's visible and what's not remains concentrated in the same hands for too long. At first, you're told about one man, then two, then no one else. And in the end, it's not Epstein who's at the center of the story, but the system that was supposed to reveal the truth. The real issue then isn't who is still hidden in the files, but how long a democracy can function when transparency becomes conditional. Because if this case disappears without a clear answer, it sets a silent precedent. And this precedent doesn't just concern this case, but all those to come. The next revelation, the next scandal, the next promise of truth. If you want to understand what's really at stake, what's preparing beyond the surface, this is where it all gets decided. And if you want to follow this analysis to the end, because this story is clearly not over, subscribe. The next part is coming faster than many think.